I've got a brilliant guy lined up for you now. He's a firm favourite here in Talk Towers because he just speaks so much sense. My mum also loves him. My mum's discovered X in recent years, and I think she only follows a few people, and James Melville is definitely one of them. And you know, if it's a favourite of Alex Phillips, that is the highest accolade you can get, James. Welcome aboard.
Oh, I mean, what an intro. I mean, shall we just end this now? I mean, I think my work's done. I mean, I've got the support of your mother.
I know, basically, it's a race between you and Rakib Ehsan because she loves Rakib as well. So I don't know who's in pole position at the moment, but if you give a sterling turn right now, then maybe you might just pip Rakib. Let's talk, first of all, about what I've got in here to talk to you about. We're going to spend some time on this, and I just want to sort of have a wander through all sorts of topics. It's the idea that kids as young as 10 are being given weight loss jabs. At least 188 severely obese youngsters are being prescribed Wegovy at specialist NHS weight clinics. That's according to data from 13 health trusts. And yet at the same time, we found that food prices have gone up by 37%. It isn't unsurprising, actually, given the instability in Ukraine. The cost of oils went up, and wheat and fertiliser. Also, when energy prices are so high, refrigerating, transporting food, all the rest of it. Of course, all the people in the Remain camp are going, it's because of Brexit. No, it's not. But it's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it, that we now have more obese kids than ever before that are actually getting jabbed, and I wonder if you think that's a good idea. And yet, at the same time, nosh costs so much. Is there a correlation?
Yeah, I think there is. In terms, first of all, first bit in terms of the cost of living crisis and the escalating food inflation. I mean, this is something that's really been going on. I think people have noticed it since COVID. You know, some connections there in terms of disruption of supply chains. There's also the money printing that devalues the currency. But it's also, quite frankly, corporate greed, supermarket greed. I mean, Tesco's, for instance, in the last year, they were showing profits of operating profits of over 3 billion. And yet, when you get sort of itemized bits of food, you know, we're all experiencing it. You go in, you get some butter, it's increased by 50p, you get some olive oil, you know, some reasonable standard of olive oil, suddenly north of £15. And you can multiply that on item after item and item. And the connection going into, therefore, health and lifestyle is that when it gets too expensive on some basic essentials, whether it's heating or eating, people start cutting. And in the case of food, they start cutting out the healthy stuff and they start going for cheap, fixed junk food. And that is obviously not good for their own health, and it leads to obesity as well. Now, the second point in terms of, you know, the obesity figures in this country are off the scale. One of the worst in Europe. Same with child obesity, and also ultra-processed foods. In terms of total budget spend of food in the UK, more than 50% of it is spent on ultra-processed foods. That is significantly higher than any other country in Europe. So we've got a number of things I think we need to discuss within sort of the food debate and the fitness debate. The other aspect of that is farming. Now, I've seen one or two comments saying the price of food is going up because the farmers are putting the price up. That's utter tosh, because the farmers are getting pittance from the supermarkets. Yeah. And the consumers on the other side are getting ripped off. But ultimately, it's about corporate greed. And the problem with that is people start making some pretty savage choices about what food they're buying, and they sort of almost dial back towards more unhealthy food.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because farmers might say, like you said, they're getting less money than ever before for meat. And I wonder, right, that one of the things we're massively lacking, and I think, you know, I think you, like me, a good friend of Asim Malhotra, who has campaigned a long time against the sort of psychopathic evil of the big food industry. People think when they go and buy food off a supermarket shelf that obviously it's got to be safe to eat, and it can't be sort of rat-infested and full of poisons. But I think it's quite questionable how much ultra-processed food is safe to eat. And they've been extremely good over the course of decades now at brainwashing people and pushing out campaigns to dupe people into think they're living healthily, when it's quite the opposite. It's normally a net by which to sort of get people addicted to their produce. First of all, in the sort of 80s and 90s, we had the low-fat phenomenon. We had all of these cereals which contain lots of sugars, ultra-refined carbohydrates, which are extremely bad for insulin levels, being marketed to us as you've got to eat these, it's good for your health. Special K had that eat 2 bowls of our cereal every day to lose weight, for crying out loud. That can't be a nutritionally balanced diet. And then we had the whole sort of push for things like margarines, low-fat mayonnaise, when what we have learnt latterly is good proper animal fats can actually lower cholesterol levels, and all of these things that they use to supplement to give mouthfeel and texture to low-fat produce are potentially things clogging up our colons and creating bowel cancers. And I think that the problem we've had is we've allowed big food to just behave in this lawless, unregulated way. We've focused all our attention on things like tobacco without realising actually that one of the biggest dangers and the things that people are consuming the most of isn't necessarily cigarettes, but it's, you know, ready meals and frozen meals. They're at it again now, of course, pushing the whole vegan thing, because I don't think anything made, you know, by whatever big manufacturer that's a vegan katsu curry has anything in there you want to eat. And what we're not doing is teaching people how to make food last. The other day, my mate Will and I bought a turkey thigh, $6.99 it was, down Tesco. Big blibbing thing. We made from that. We roasted it on the first night and sort of filled ourselves to the point of saturation. There was so much left over, we made a pie. After the pie, there was so much left over, I made pasties and gave the guy painting my house one of them. Then there was big bone left over that I was able to make souk and stock from. That turkey thigh for $6.99, I kid you not, James, I kid you not, I could have fed a family for 3 days in a row from one turkey thigh.
This is something I've been talking about a long time. I think it's sort of, it was born into me. You know, I grew up on a farm. It's kind of, we learn to, you know, appreciate the sort of fruits of our labour. You know, it's from the field to the fork. And part of that isn't just obviously about, you know, the things we consume inside ourselves and healthy eating, but it is that point that you've mentioned. It's about, I think we need a national conversation. Jimmy Alden tried to do this a few years ago about not just what we're consuming, but about cooking and actually spinning it out a bit. So I agree, I do it all the time. You cook a roast, you know, that's going to be quite pricey, but then incrementally it becomes cheaper because, as you said, then you put some of it into a stew, or there's some of it into sandwiches, or some of it into some soup, and it spins out 3 or 4 meals. And it's up to individuals to then sort of understand, you know, not just about what is the right thing to eat, but what is the right thing to cook and how you can actually save money in the long term by spinning it out a bit. I think there's going to be another conversation that we have to have, and that is about an appreciation and support for our farmers.
Yeah.
Because at what sort of crazy stage do we get to with governments that they sort of decide that, okay, what we're going to do is punish our farmers? You know, the 2 most important things, I think, the bedrock of our society is food security and energy security, and we have a Labour government that's willfully destroying both, to the point that farmers are now facing horrendous inheritance tax and the prospect of a zero-sum game of selling up to get, you know, money in to pay for this 10-year period of paying the inheritance tax. So you've got that bit. You've also got a lack, I think, of public understanding of the importance of farming and what they do every single day of the year to provide fresh food. You've got supermarkets on the other side ripping off farmers, giving them pittance, handcuffing farmers because of supply, the mass supply that the farmers are reliant on supermarkets buying their goods but at cheap prices. And then the consumers on the other side getting ripped off. And you put all that together with a lack of education and understanding about what is good and healthy and sustainable and how to cook and spin it out during a cost of living crisis. It's a really, really important debate. And I think Britain's really struggling on this right now. Some of the figures are shocking in terms of obesity and also about ultra-processed foods. The figures are way worse than any other European country. And if we want to talk like governments do about protecting the NHS, as they did a few years ago, they need to have a very honest conversation about people's lifestyles and the benefits of understanding the relationship from the field to the fork of what is healthy and what is unhealthy.
I totally agree. And actually, you know, I'm so glad I was brought up, never allowed to go, not never allowed, every now and then might have had a McDonald's, but I just wasn't brought up with any of those things. My mum cooked every meal fresh. She says
it's
she
like
hates
the
cooking.
Keynesian upbringings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she says she hates cooking is a bad cook, but actually she's very good at it. And we had proper healthy food. We had to eat it. My mum and dad grow loads of veg in the back garden. They always, now I live back in the Shire, bringing me over there. Oh, their beans are the best. Their runner beans are just mwah, manna from heaven. But I was brought up on, you know, eating proper food, and I love, as an adult now, I love eating a bit of cartilage. I love a good bone. I like some skin. I love a bit of offal, and all of these bits, the cheaper parts of meat, I think are personally extremely good for you. That's why we got big grinding teeth and canines. We're supposed to be getting involved with a bit of carcass. And I just wish that young kids now were retaught how to have a relationship with their food, like I learnt at my grandma's knee.
I think that's a very good point, and I think it's something that I've been doing with a campaign that I've set up called No Farmers, No Food. It's not just about, you know, bad government policy to support farmers. It's also about that relationship, as I keep saying, from the field to the fork. And part of that should be tearing up these massive corporate contracts that are going into hospitals and schools and replacing it with supply contracts with local fresh food from local farmers into schools and into hospitals. That would help the health of the nation. And also, in the case of schools, put it back in the curriculum. Cooking, growing your own. So that, again, there's a practical application which leads to understanding about the whole process of growing food and what is good, healthy food versus bad food. And that then would have a knock-on effect possibly regarding child obesity and lowering the numbers.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the cheapest stuff for me is the tastiest stuff, and very often is the healthiest stuff. I say bring back faggots. I blimmin' love a good faggot from a butcher's shop. Amazing things. Where have they gone? I mean, I still buy them. I think I'm probably the only person of my generation who does.
Well, I mean, it's each to their own, and I think it's about freedom of choice, isn't it, in terms of what people consume? I mean, my whole thing is, again, we're all products of our upbringing, and I was lucky enough in my upbringing to be sort of completely embroiled in farm culture, and I understood, you know, in terms of what is involved in producing the nation's food. But I also understood about what is involved in terms of what is healthy to eat and how, I mean, an enjoyment. I love cooking, and that was instilled in me at a young age as well. But there is a bigger debate about, can't we get to the point whereby there's a national campaign where everyone realizes that it is good to cook, it is good to try different things, and it's not necessarily hugely expensive. Take the whole debate about farm shops. And I know it's more difficult in cities, but there's always supermarkets more convenient and also less expensive. Well, that difference between supermarkets and farm shops is really narrowing, because you can get, and it's also the food that you're getting in farm shops a lot better. So I think what we need to do is have a conversation not just about supporting farmers in terms of their work, but also supporting ourselves in terms of, you know, learning those great lessons about how to cook properly, what is nutritionist food, and also moving away as much as possible from some of the major supermarkets, if, for instance, farmers aren't getting a good deal, but also if consumers are getting ripped off. And we're at a point now with this sort of another cycle of inflation. Normally happens with inflation that it's an overheating economy, buy luxury goods too much. This one is different, and it's really worrying because it's essential goods and services that are going through the roof. You've got energy, you've got water prices, but in particular right now, food. And the knock-on effect, because there's always collateral damages to things like this, and the knock-on effect of this will be, once again, people will start making some choices to cut back possibly on the healthy stuff and go for more unhealthy stuff. But within that, people can still help themselves and actually learn the whole process of what is good food, what is bad food, and also cooking more meals that can spin out across the week.
No, I totally agree. And I think, you know, like a while ago, it became trendy for adults to do colouring in for their mental health. Go and cook something. Because that, for me, is my version of therapy. I'm never happier than I am wielding a knife in a kitchen. James, it's been wonderful catching up with you. Thank you so much. I thought we were going to talk about other things, but we just went big on the food stuff, and quite happily too. I think it's a really important topic of conversation. I've been banging on about this for forever. If you listen to my shows, I'm always talking about my stock pot. Here's my little secret, right? So, whisper it quietly. I'm actually 41 years old. In fact, I'm now brushing up against 42. And I don't look too haggard. Some of you might disagree. Some of you might think actually she looks like she's had a pretty tough paper round. But I kind of think that I'm holding it together okay. And I put it down to collagen. And I don't get all these funny, you know, salmon, sperm, marine supplements or something like that. I'm not bothering with all of that stuff. No. I know better than to be hoodwinked by these people and their crazy supplements, because all the supplements that you go and buy from your health food shop, you can get out of food. And I think one of the greatest things on planet Earth is chicken skin. If you're one of those people who goes, I don't eat the skin because it's unhealthy, what are you doing? Whatever you do, whenever you buy chicken, buy it with the skin on. Even if you don't want to cook the skin, take the skin off and then lay it all out on a grease-proof piece of paper, whack it in the oven at quite a high temperature, you know, 180, 190, maybe a bit more if you're fan-assisted, if a bit less, and cook that bad boy down to make like crisps. And munch those, because they're really high in good fat, the sort of good animal fat that lowers cholesterol, really high in omegas, really high in all your lovely sort of vitamin Bs and all of that stuff which you need for immune support and bone health and skin health. And here's my tip, ladies. Really high in collagen. So save yourself a few quid, not spending 25 quid a month down boots getting some sort of like weird marine collagen made in some lab in Taiwan. Just eat chicken skin. There's the Alex thought of the day.